you push yourself out of your comfort zone, do difficult things, and build skills that will last a lifetime, you'll never be lost again.
So I was surfing the internet, and there was, I don't exactly remember, maybe a thumbnail about a story about Emily Miller. It said a Leucadian woman has this women's rally. I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. So I click it, and I begin reading it. And as I'm reading it, all the features of the Rebelle Rally, the camping, the searching for checkpoints, off-road adventures, other women, it just resonated with me. And I looked at that and said, my daughter and I need to do this. Prior to signing up for the Rebelle Rally, I had zero navigation experience. My daughter had minimal off-road driving experience. We didn't even have a car. But we signed up and we were all in.
Well, I mean, I think what's intimidating about it the first time, I mean, even coming from a motorsports background, like doing anything for the first time, like, you don't know what you're supposed to do or how to do it, how to play the game. You know, when we went into that first year at the Rebelle, we were like, I don't know.
I've got a heading on that big white mountain too. Because I'm sure it's white on your map, right?
Yeah, it's super clear.
Yeah, super clear. That is
Super clear.
which point? Before it first goes down right there, it is, let me see if we can show it.
When a first-time competitor comes in and expects to win, you're like, you're gonna do kind of the worst out of any of the first-time competitors.
The first time I competed in the rally was it was a disaster. I don't know if traumatic is the right word, but it was a really difficult week and a half for me. I had not known my teammate, and it was one of those things where she didn't have a teammate and I didn't have a teammate, and so we sort of were thrown together randomly. And it's such an intense event that if you really don't know the person very well, it can be really, really challenging. So by the time I was done with it, I was fairly shell-shocked. To not have your phone, to not have any kind of lifeline to anybody. You can't call your friend, your therapist, your parents, like anyone. And that was extra special because there was a lot of friction in the car with my teammate, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to navigate my way through the competition, let alone the course. And it was a massive learning experience. But I will say this, when it was all said and done, and Emily Miller came up to me and told me this, she said, I'm glad it was hard for you. She said, because now you get it.
It is just a beatdown. And where we start, it's normally colder when we start. It gets hotter by the time we finish. We've had temperatures from 17 degrees to, 111 degrees. We have every type of terrain. We've had wildfires. We've had massive 70-mile-per-hour sustained windstorms that have wrecked base camp. We've had snow. We've had it all. And you just have to deal with whatever it is.
Every day on the rally is relentless. From the moment you wake up, and it's funny because she rings a cowbell at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're up way before the cowbell even starts to ding.
If you're early on your start, 5 in the morning is too late. Your checkpoints are already sitting there waiting for you. So we get up at 4:30. And it's dark and you do not want to get up. Sometimes it's cold, but you do it because you get to get your checkpoints and your paperwork and you're pretty excited.
You've got this massive list of things to do to even get you to the starting line. You are just on, and you have to be on because there's so much to do. There's so much to accomplish.
As a navigator, you need all the time to plot the points in the morning. So I go into the tent, I get my paperwork, and I start plotting immediately. My driver, on the other hand, does everything.
For the driver, if you're kind of doing your job right, that means you're kind of taking care of everything that the navigator can't. You're packing up the tent, you're getting her breakfast, you're getting her coffee. You start to understand and learn the habits.
Then at 6 o'clock, there's a mandatory driver's meeting. That's when Emily Miller tells us important things for the day, and you do listen to that because she does not waste words at 6 o'clock in the morning. So you take good notes, and because she will tell you very, very important information.
By the time you're sitting in your car, your palms are probably sweating because you're about to do this time, speed, distance thing, which is the weirdest challenge in that you're not going fast because the speeds are never quick. You're going over sort of terrain that's not terribly challenging, but having to keep your mind super focused on how fast you're going, where you're going, what am I looking for next, what time am I supposed to be at this thing, was that the road I was looking for? No, okay, great. What's our distance? Are we at the right spot? It is a 100% occupied brain kind of a day.
It is a grind. I mean, meaning there's a lot going on, but 11 hours goes by like that. And especially as a navigator, because you're solving problems continuously.
Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna go up to this turn. I'm gonna measure, then we're gonna go up 0.3, and then we should have a turn, and then we're gonna go 0.2, and we're gonna stop.
Okay.
I don't think people understand how hard navigation is. I've had people write me letters after doing the Rebelle and say, I want to apologize because I didn't prepare well enough to come into the rally. I thought it was going to be easier. You say it's hard, and I feel like I didn't show you the respect by training hard enough. I blew it.
I think as a navigator in an off-road event like the Rebelle, where you're using traditional skills, you have to be a lot more situationally aware all the time. It's very different from the speed rallies that I grew up doing, where you can just be super focused and very focused on your vehicle, your team, your car at that moment, and that's all you really care about. Overlanding navigation, you have to broaden your perspective. You have to be outside of your vehicle mentally all of the time. As soon as you are concerned about anything going on in here, you have a chance to miss what's actually going on around you. That's when you get lost.
You know, when you feel lost, you have a physiologic response to feeling, even if you're not lost, technically, but the second you feel lost, you are lost. You know, your heart rate rises, your blood pressure rises, you start to sweat, you don't think straight. Everyone on the Rebelle gets lost. Everyone will get lost. Everyone will feel that. It's just, how do you respond? What do you do when you get in that situation?
When you've figured out that there's been a mistake, the first thing to do is to stop. So many people will just keep going and just make that error worse and worse and worse. And we see it all the time at the Rebelle. We'll just watch their tracks and we're like, you can see where the mistake happened. And they just start convincing themselves that there is not a mistake.
It's not going out on a limb to say every navigator has experienced map magic in the Rebelle Rally. So basically how it goes like this. Here's your map. It's black and white, and there's lots of lines and contours and mountains and roads. And you think you know where you're going, and you're driving along, and you kind of want to make sure you are where you are. So you go, oh, well, there's a mountain right there. And oh, yeah, on the map, there's a mountain, and we should be seeing an intersection. Oh, there's an intersection. Yeah, there's an intersection right there. And you will convince yourself that you are where you think you are. Often that's not the case. There's thousands of mountains out there. There's roads every which way direction. And you will convince yourself that's where you are, and you're not. It's probably the most difficult part of navigating. not succumbing to map magic.
I am changing the declination of the compass to match where we are right now. So we've been at 12 and I'm putting it down to 11.5 so that we are accurate. So the compass is in increments of 2. And so to try to get 11.5 between tiny, tiny, tiny little ticks is a little challenging, but I think I got it. I'm gonna call it good right there. Es muy difícil. Ooh. So now, hopefully we will not get too terribly lost.
So learning navigation, learning the skills is pretty straightforward. You know, this is latitude, longitude, this is how you plot, these are the roads you have to map. That takes us about a day of training when we do Rebelle U. But putting it all together in the car, there is no substitute for experience or practice. So we have a paper map, and latitude and longitude is the coordinate system that's on the map. We receive a checkpoint guide, and it's a latitude and longitude of a point on the planet. And so you take that latitude and longitude and you plot it on the map with your pencil, and you put a little mark. And so you can see that mark will be on a map that will have roads and mountains and washes and features that you can use to know where you are. And then you plot, we get between 20 and 25 checkpoints per day. So you plot all of them. And as you plot them, you'll actually start to see a course connecting those dots. And that is the course that we are supposed to take. So that's the first step. That's the mechanical, you're getting the points on the paper. That's not too hard to do. Next is you're in the car, and now you have to get the vehicle to those points. That's the key to the navigation skills. So you'll start off and you'll say, okay, we need to go on this road for 2.3 kilometers, not 2.4 kilometers, 2.3 kilometers, exact measurements. And so you'll have an odometer, and at exactly that point, you'll be turning maybe left, and you will see a left road to the left, and you follow that. So the navigator rarely takes their eyes off the map and the terrain and the odometer to ensure that we're staying on that course. Not make it sound easy, but there are many times when maybe you went on a road that wasn't the right one because one was maybe obscured by a bush or something. Maybe I went 2.1 instead of the 2.2 I was supposed to go. Actually getting from point to point using the features on the map and using your odometer. That's the hard part.
The challenge of navigation takes organization and brain power and strategy and the ability to think clearly and know exactly where you are. And when you don't know exactly where you are, how to not come unglued and to gather yourself and figure it out. And that is such a great skill. And so when I became a better navigator, I became a better driver, I became a better teammate, I became better at a lot of things.
To be put in a situation where you're looking on a map and then you're looking out into the world that surrounds you and you're able to give yourself context, I know exactly where I am. Which, by the way, those are my favorite words that my navigator ever says to me. I know exactly where we are. There's something that's so reassuring about that, even if it had absolutely nothing to do with the competition. Because I think there's so much chatter, there's so much noise in the world now that so many people don't know exactly where they are. And to be able to have that manifest itself in a very real, very tangible way that is this rally, that to me is what is so extraordinary.
When you're sitting next to someone for day after day after day in what feels like a high-stakes situation where you could get lost, you could break the car, you could just get stuck, you have to really turn a mirror onto yourself and admit to yourself all of the things that you are bad at. And that can be really hard, right? None of us want to look back at ourselves and see how not cool we've been about a lot of things. But when you do that, it is extremely empowering. And what I teach in our Rebelle U's is to take 100% responsibility for whatever is going on between you and your teammate. And it doesn't matter what it is. you can fix it. When I figured that out as a navigator, when I figured that out as a driver, I was like, oh my gosh, I can fix it. Yeah, it's my fault, but also I can fix it. And it allows you to see the whole situation in a very different light. You're not a victim. No, you can do it, you can fix it. And when you take 100% responsibility for it, then you have all the power to make it better, to do it right the next time. And it took some really, really hard situations between me and my teammate at times throughout my career before I realized that. Even if it's minor, even if you normally totally get along with this person, you never get along with them 100% of the time, right? There's always something in there that you need to change. And when you realize it's you that needs to change, not the other person, then you can do it.
Competitors walk away with a much greater understanding of how to communicate, what someone needs to hear, what someone doesn't need to hear, and how to communicate through challenges. There's the physical skill of communicating, which is how much information does the driver need? The navigator has a lot of information in their head. The driver can only hear and process so much. The driver sometimes needs more information than the navigator is giving them, or less. And then how do you tell the person what you need to hear? So if you don't like conflict, it's going to be a tough deal because you have to meet the communication problem head on, or the problem head on. You have to be direct, you have to be straight up, honest, clear, but you have to do it together. Because you have to fix it before you get in the car the next morning. You have to fix it before the end of the next checkpoint, or everything you've worked for a year or more is down the drain. The average day is 10 hours of competition time, and very few people come across the line earlier.
Literally by the end of the day, you're physically exhausted, but you're mentally exhausted, which is, to me, sometimes even like worse than being just tired, because your brain is just like, oh, I'm done. And then you think, oh shit, I have 4 more days of this, or 6 more days of this. How am I gonna survive?
They have an hour to break down, go to impound, go to the mechanics. If they work on their cars, some will end up working on their cars all night, so they have to be there with the mechanics all night. And then it's get back up and do it all over again. Day after day, after day, after day, after day, after day, after day, after day. People say, well, why isn't it just 3 days? Anybody can do anything for 3 days.
I have a theory about day 3. If you go away for a long weekend, it's usually 3 days. Oh, you tell me we're gonna take off Friday, we're gonna go, it'll be fun, 2 days. Sunday night we'll be back, and Monday I'll be back into my life. If you start the Rebelle, we normally get there on Wednesday, tech is on Thursday, Friday we have our sort of day 0, Saturday is day 1, Sunday is day 2. By the time you get to day 3, your brain and your body are thinking, okay, now it's time to go home. Now it's time for me to get back into my regular life. I can go see my kids, I can hang out with my husband, I'm gonna go back to work, I'm gonna check my emails, because I haven't been there and I'm gonna check them now. Oh, look, that's what's happening in the world. You don't have that opportunity. You are right back into it, and everything in your being is like, well, this is wrong. Like, this is so wrong. Like, this is not my life. Like, where's my life?
things just go sideways and you want to quit. And I do remember there was one time we were driving down between regions and we were on the freeway and we were headed to San Diego. And I'm like, maybe we should just drive home. Like, there are times you're like, oh, I'm tired. But you're like, no. Columbus is going to be amazing. This is amazing. Stay with it. You can do some things for a day, 2 days, 3 days. It starts to get harder when it's 3 and 4 days of doing something that's hard.
Everybody's going to have a day 3, and whether it comes on day 1 or day 5, you're going to have the day where you question yourself. It's when you realize, I really don't like my co-driver. My car is horrible. I'm tired, I'm cranky, why did I sign up for this? Just all the things. You just want to quit. And you can't, because like, where are you gonna go? You're in this thing.
I'm convinced that day 3 is that day where your body, your brain, your psyche, your soul, all of the bits of you have to make this like sea change, this massive adjustment that's like, okay, this was my normal, but now this is my normal.
You go from your real life to all of a sudden no cell phones, no communication, no family. All the things that probably engulf your normal life are just out the window, and it's eat, sleep, navigate, and drive, and then repeat.
And then by like day 5, day 6, you're like, I feel like this is the only thing I've ever done in my entire life.
That's really why I love doing the Rebelle, because you just have one thing, and that's to get through that moment as best as you can and having as best of a time as you can. And you don't get that opportunity in real life. Especially, doesn't necessarily apply to me because, I'm footloose and fancy free. Like, I don't have any kids. But I would imagine that women who have kids, to finally just focus on one thing just must be amazing. That's gotta be great. I don't ever want to find out, but it's gotta be great.